Hey, welcome to the Cine-Bros podcast. This is our first episode, and we talk about the hottest films of the year, the classics, and everything cinema. And I am your host, Dante Velez, and I'm joined by my co-host, Josiah Broderick, Kiki Ragland.
What's up?
And we're going to be diving into this first episode with a TV series, but check us out. Don't forget to check us out later in the month, because we're going to be diving into other topics like music industry stuff and everything pop culture. So stay tuned. It's going to be a weekly basis thing. But as for today, we're going to be going into discussing and really breaking down this piece of television that we consider to be a masterpiece, one of the greatest of all time. And without further ado, let's cook. I know that all three of us were very excited to get into this because
we've been talking about this for so long, wanting to do this.
Yeah. Like, this has always been something that is just chock full of content, and that we just kind of go on rants about.
Yeah.
So this is
we finally get to express it.
Yeah, express it and synthesize it into something a little bit more structured.
Yes.
No, 100%.
But if you, as the audience, didn't already figure out what we're gonna be talking about with the little hints we've been dropping, we're gonna be talking about Breaking Bad. And to kind of transition into everything that we're talking about today, we're gonna have Kiki kind of discuss the synopsis of it.
Yeah. So first of all, if any of you guys have not seen Breaking Bad, what are you doing?
you gotta watch it.
And if any of you have not seen Breaking Bad, pause this, because there are going to be a lot of spoilers.
Immediately get off of this, watch it, and then you can
come back
to it. It's open for discussion. So,
but for those of you who have, you all know Breaking Bad is a show created by Vince Gilligan, starring Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul. Bryan Cranston plays Walter White. Aaron Paul plays Jesse Pinkman, and it's about a high school chemistry teacher who gets diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. Mm-hmm. And that's basically who Bryan Cranston plays. His name's Walter White, and he turns to manufacturing and selling methamphetamine to secure his family's financial future, because it's terminal lung cancer and he only has weeks to live, or that's what they tell him. And so he teams up with Jesse Pinkman, and they begin their battles throughout the drug world.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's more about the underlining meaning of the show is he initially wants to just make enough money to secure his family future, but then it's about them getting drawn, especially Walter White, drawn to this power and control, and that eventually leads to his demise, and he loses everyone he cares about, and it's just him at the top.
Oh yeah.
And he's, honestly, in my opinion, he is one of the most tragic characters in a show.
One of the best written characters, most nuanced, subtle characters,
100%.
Just most complex characters.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the laydown of it. The next thing that we kind of want to discuss about is like as Kiki was talking about, there's a lot of subtlety to these characters, and a lot of these character traits that as you go deeper into their psyche, you realize how broken certain people are, or how controlling and manipulative they are.
100%.
Yeah, no, it's true. And even going off of that, when you take down certain characters and you watch the show and how they develop from the very, very beginning and over time, just it's night and day. And so, like, specifically, like, if you want to dive deep into it, like, if you go from Walter, just in general, played by Bryan Cranston, first, as we talk about all the time, and as you see in the first seasons, he's just a normal chemistry teacher, just an average day. Like we mentioned before we started recording, he's kind of like Ned Flanders,
from The Simpsons, just everyday neighbor.
Just everyday neighbor. But you notice that he's very quiet, kind of,
he's really reserved
to himself.
He's very scared.
Yeah, very scared. And even other characters will make remarks about his masculinity. What Hank says.
There's that underlying anger inside. Yeah, Hank, played by Dean Norris, who's Walter White's brother-in-law, who actually works for the Albuquerque DEA.
Yes.
Which provides for a lot of interesting dynamics within the show, because he's the drug dealer, he's the police. Like, it has a lot of clashes, and so it makes it that much more interesting.
Yeah. one of the best characters
Oh,
on the show. Yeah,
definitely.
100%.
We'll get more into him
Yeah.
as we go along.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant written character.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, throughout what Josiah said, especially that first episode starts with Walt's birthday.
Yeah.
They're all through. Breaking Bad is a span. It's a span of 2 years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's in a span of 2 years, and it starts with Walt's 50th and with his 52nd.
Yeah.
But for his 50th, even if it was his birthday, Hank was talking just like, even though he loves him, he just talks down on him.
No, he
you know?
does. Yeah.
I mean, even in the pilot, like he talks down to him, right? But he puts himself on the TV, showing everybody
Yeah.
his haul of the methamphetamine,
Yeah.
and then he's like making
Look how much
fun
money
of,
we scored.
Right.
You know, look what we caught.
Yeah, and he's making fun of Walt for not being strong enough to hold up a gun when he's like testing
Yeah.
it out,
Yeah.
holding it. So it really, pokes at Walt's masculinity, and I think that's a very underlying thing
Yeah.
throughout the entire show. Is he wants to
He wants to
prove
show
himself.
everyone what
He
he's
wants-
capable
He
of.
wants to prove himself.
Because he's such an he has such a brilliant mind, but his job is just so
Yeah.
it's too overachieved. His
Yeah.
job.
And that's what you see, even like going back to that as well.
Mhm.
You see so many people, and even what we said, like people underestimate him because that Ned Flanders type of appearance that he has. But he himself knows how much he's capable of.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He himself knows I'm a genius. And even
I can do more.
I can do more than this. Even his friends.
And I feel like that
Yeah.
cancer diagnosis he
Yeah.
got really opened it up.
Opened his eyes.
Yeah.
He was awake.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which is
And it began even like from that point. It began when he meets Jesse in the very beginning. It begins from him trying to do kind of like a Robin Hood act. Like he's going to go into this business to be able to provide enough money for his family.
Yeah.
That's how it kind of starts off.
and that also plays into the masculinity because he wants to be a provider for his family.
Yeah.
And he knows that he's a smart and capable guy,
Yeah.
and he is an overachieving high school chemistry teacher.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so he just knows that he could have done so much more in his life.
Yeah.
And that's what eats away at him is because he knows he can do more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why he goes into this business too. That's like half
Yeah.
of why.
That is half of one.
Yeah.
And I also feel like with the business and with that anger he had, he really just wants to prove himself, and he wants to show everyone what he can do. So it's a brilliant show.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a sad show though too, because he had at the start of the show he had a family who loved him. He had people around him who cared about him,
Yeah.
and then at the end he has nothing.
Nothing.
You know, he has no
Yeah.
one.
Falls around. It
Yeah.
all crumbles around him.
It all crumbles
We'll-
around,
we'll-
which
we'll-
I am
we'll-
very excited.
We'll
talk
get to
about.
that sentiment
Yeah.
a little bit later, but
Yeah.
now transitioning into the secondary main character Jesse,
Yeah.
he is also a very troubled, very broken person
He is.
that starts off as just this junkie.
Yeah.
He was a former student of Walt.
Mhm.
He was underachieving as well, and so he resorted to drugs. He was disowned by his parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
And played by Aaron Paul, and it's such a funny relationship because with Jesse and Walt, they have so many. First of all, their chemistry is off the charts.
Oh.
Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul's, but you really see from the start too that throughout the show, Walt he cares about Jesse, but
Yeah.
he manipulates him
Yeah.
from the start of the show, wanting.
But that's what
to
makes it so complex is that
Yeah.
he does care for him.
He
Yeah.
does care for him,
Yeah.
but it's also, would Jesse's life have been better off if Walt didn't come into the picture?
Mm.
He
Yeah.
was a junkie,
No, that's true.
you know, and what would have been, what would have
knows?
happened?
Yeah.
Because he was already hooked on the meth,
Yeah.
and this business though kind of helped him break it, but he lost. It's just like Jesse, he
Yeah.
lost so many people too
Yeah.
because of Walt.
No, yeah.
You know, and the fact of Aaron Paul, he was only supposed to be on the show for one season.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's true.
And Vince Gilligan wanted him to get killed at the end of season 1, but they were so impressed. He was so impressed
Like,
with Aaron Paul's
what would
performance.
Breaking Bad be like
Without
without
him?
that dynamic
Yeah.
between Walt and Jesse?
I
It would
can't
be
imagine it.
so
it would
different.
not be at that high quality
It
if
wouldn't.
those two
Yeah.
weren't together.
And
Exactly.
he's one of those characters, if you really notice him, like in terms of his life going from where it was to
Mhm.
then, it's almost stagnant.
Mm.
Because he was already in that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Lots of characters take huge dips, but his was kind of stagnant. Like, obviously his life gets worse and worse. Everybody's life gets worse and worse as you go further.
Within the course of the
Everybody,
show.
as the course of the show. But his kind of stayed stagnant. Like he was always involved with these, gang leaders or these
even
these
his
other
friends,
bosses.
even
Yeah,
his
all his
friends like are
everybody.
junkies too, and
Yeah.
they're like influencing him to
His
get
life
high
is
all the
just
time.
right there.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing I love Jesse so much is because if you really notice him, is that he actually takes little bits and pieces of every single character inside of the show. He takes little pieces of it and he adds that to himself as well. You know, and he has good chemistry with. If you look at all the main characters inside of the show, he kind of has his own one-on-one moments with them.
Yeah.
For example, when he's with Gustavo, when they go to Mexico,
Played by Giancarlo Esposito.
Exactly. When they're all
Fantastic.
together, when he saves them because he takes them over there to the doctors and stuff like that. Like they're talking, just like as if they're friends, you know.
Yes.
And he has his own moment, even with Mike.
Yeah.
He has his own chemistry with Mike, and Mike.
Played by Jonathan Banks.
Exactly, which is beautiful. Yeah. But yeah, and it's so sad because the only thing, if you really look at it, it seems like the only thing that Jesse wants is, you know, like he has that longing for.
He wants that happiness.
Yeah,
you know.
That's all he really wants.
Yeah.
And you know, he goes. You can see, especially if you go along, you know, that PTSD. You know, he's thinking about everything that's kind of happened, and his longing for Jane. You know, he feels, you know, sad. You know, that was kind of like his soul.
Every time he gets something that makes him happy or fulfilled in his life, he loses it immediately.
Yeah.
And most of it that he gets and loses is because of Walt.
Yeah.
Walt, you know, he lets Jane die, so then he loses her. Like he gets him right back into the business and gets him deep with Tuco and all that.
Yep.
I honestly think that's one of the worst things on the show, letting Jane die.
Oh,
that's one of the
100%.
worst things Walt did.
Yeah.
And that really shows his transition from Walter White to Breaking Fans Know to Heisenberg.
Yeah.
Which is his alter ego name for when he's the drug.
And also poisoning
Brock.
Yeah. That was.
It's awful. I mean that end at the end of season 4, showing that he poisoned Brock. I'm just like.
There's no limit. There's
when
no,
I
there's
first
no
watched
line.
that, I was like, okay, is this gonna be the last season? How are they making another season after this?
Yeah.
But then you're just like, oh my god.
You realize it was
that.
him.
Yeah.
It was him who poisoned him.
And you going into the final season, you're like, wow, what else is Walt capable of doing? How far is he willing to go to really
Does
show?
he have a line that he will cross?
And apparently not.
No, because in the last season he goes even more overboard with it.
Yeah.
It's one of those
even
shows
worse.
where I feel like it has a great start, great middle, great end. It just knows when to end. Not every show can do that. Breaking Bad could have been going on. They could have made so much
They
more
could have
money.
really milked it.
Yeah, they could have made more seasons, made much more money, but the top-notch shows really has that consistency. You know, it has that consistency, and from start to finish. But the great masterpieces of the show have a way of having start, but getting better and better and better each season too.
True.
100%.
Like it just progressed.
Yeah, and even going into that, like even if we can talk about Hank.
Mm-hmm.
For example, he kind of carries that.
Played by Dean Norris.
Yeah.
Again.
There we go. He has that almost like machismo. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like frat boy, kind of like, you know.
Right. He's a guy's guy. He's a bro. You know, like
watches
the
football every Sunday. You know all that.
Well, I feel like
makes his own beer.
Yeah. Well, that's one of our segments is actually who would you want to get a beer with?
Exactly.
And I know this was later on, but I feel like we should talk about it.
Oh
now,
no! I mean,
you know,
what better time to talk about it than
since
right
we're
now?
talking about that, which we all have our different characters that we'd rather want to get a beer with, but I feel like the best one is Hank.
Yeah.
Since we're already talking, he makes his own beer.
He's just a chill guy.
He's just a chill guy. Why would you want to hang out with him?
Hands in pockets, just chilling on the couch, man. Like
he's
what
a good,
you were saying.
He's
like,
a good wingman too.
Oh, he's a great.
I feel like
he loves his rocks.
He loves his minerals.
The minerals. The minerals. No, but he, like what you were saying, he does have a macho exterior.
Yeah.
But what they do explore in the show is that he does have PTSD.
Yes.
He has panic attacks and breakdowns, and he doesn't like when Marie sees him that way. And who is played by Betsy Brant. And
thank you, beat me to it.
And he doesn't like being seen vulnerable.
No, he doesn't.
Because he likes to put on a front and seem like he's the man and that he is always going to be on top of everything.
Yeah.
And
you know,
whenever he is vulnerable, you notice that whenever he has those breakdowns, he's always by himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's never around people. Like it's always by himself. In the restroom, when he figures out that it's by himself. When he puts it all together, when he's driving, you know, he's just like,
and he starts shaking, and he just starts hyperventilating.
Because he
doesn't want to
he's
show
not being seen by anybody.
He
but again, all these panic attacks, all this breaking out. It's all from Walt.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And this never would have been his life. Everyone's
either
life
indirect.
took a turn
Yeah.
when Walt decided to start getting into the meth business.
did.
It affected everyone around him.
Everyone. Yeah.
And
It's either indirectly or directly impacted by Walt
Yes.
because of what he's doing.
Which is crazy.
Because it goes hand in hand with his job, obviously, because he's a DEA agent.
Yeah.
Like, whatever's going to happen with the cartel or in any drug business is going to negatively affect.
and now
you
his
know,
for the
his-
better part
his
of the
job.
next part of the next year and a half, he's fixated on
Getting
catching
this guy.
Heisenberg,
Yep.
who is his brother-in-law, and it's
Which
just
is the ironic part of it.
yeah.
is-
But
yeah.
he's the one. Walt. It's Hank got shot because of Walt.
Mhm.
Yep.
Because of the
Exactly.
Salamanca twins,
Yep.
who are played by who's played
Kinda
I'm gonna
dipping
pull it up
into
right now.
that.
I'm gonna pull it up right now.
Bear with us.
Yes.
Talk among
Well,
yourselves.
exactly.
But the Salamanca twins, one of them is played by Luis Moncada, and who's played by Marco Salamanca, and then Mark Margulis, who's played by Luis Salamanca. They're the ones who came from Mexico over the border because of what happened with Walt and Jesse and Tuco. Because
Tuco.
Walt, yeah,
Who was played by Raymond Cruz.
yes,
And so it's just a butterfly effect of one thing affecting the other thing, and it's just a domino effect.
it's a
And
domino effect.
it just completely unravels
Yeah.
this relationship between Hank and Walt. And the
Yeah.
ironic thing is Hank, throughout the entire show, he shows off how smart he is.
Yeah.
And he has an intuition, like a sixth sense, that helps him like catch all of these guys.
Well, he was the only one who thought potentially Gus Fring could be one of the biggest drug dealers.
And as
Yeah.
everyone was saying, nah, that's
No.
not
Yeah.
possible.
He was the only one who knew.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
But
He
as-
had a hunch on it.
But as smart as he is, his own brother-in-law is doing all of this underneath his
Yeah.
nose, and he
Yeah.
can't figure that out because
But
he's blind
Walt,
to it.
on some occasions, wants to him to know.
Mhm.
You know, there's parts of Walt that want Hank to know that
Yeah.
I'm doing this. He wants, back to
Yeah.
what we were talking about, he wants people to, he wants that recognition.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Of, I made all this money. I'm the kingpin. Look what I'm doing. Even though it's caught up, but there's that ego of him too.
Yeah.
There's this scene in, I believe it's the 4th season where they're all having a family
Mhm.
dinner, and
I know
then
what
this
you're
is
talking
that.
about.
Yeah. And Walt starts drinking, and because there's that thing of him that wants people to know, but he can't say it. But Hank gave up on finding the Heisenberg because he believed it was Gail Bedecker.
It was all shut and closed. Like
it was all
everything was done.
Yep.
Like he was in the clear.
He was in the clear. Gail Bedecker is actually played by David Costabile, who is also a great actor. Who is also a phenomenal actor in the series.
Yeah.
But
An amazing singer.
it's amazing. But Walt, he couldn't let it go. He couldn't let because Hank was talking about how brilliant Bedecker was, saying like, "Wow, this guy, if he actually applied his mind to something that was legal and something, who knows what he could have done for humanity and what." Because when one of his quotes like, "How many geniuses are there actually in the world?" And this was, you could tell there was like the shock was just getting closer and closer on Walt. This was killing Walt.
Yeah.
He's like, I did this.
It's destroying his pride. It's poking at.
It is
at
just 100%. So Walt's like, Hank, not to tell you your business, but the drawings you showed me of Bedecker's drawing, it's genius.
It's not.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
He's
he
like,
says it.
I think actually, I think your guy's still out there.
Yeah.
I think this is not actually your.
And then,
Heisenberg.
and then while he's doing that, you can just see Skylar, who's
Skylar,
played by Anna Gunn.
Yeah.
She's just like, what are you doing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why are you outing yourself
That
again?
ego. That
You know,
ego.
Ego.
Yeah.
And then the scene after, the morning after, Walt was a little hungover, but woke up, and Skylar was like, I think you want to get caught. And
Mhm.
Walt's like, Skylar, what are you talking about? He's like, just admit, Walt, that you're in danger, and then this is the first time you really see that Heisenberg side going out on Skylar, where he's. And
Who do you
this,
think you're talking
And
to?
this is one of the best lines. Honestly, this is one of the best lines.
This is what won him the Emmy that
In
season.
season 4. Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is the scene that won
Mhm.
him. It's the "I am the danger"
I'm the
scene.
danger.
I am the one who knocks.
Yeah.
It's just acting perfection. It's
Yeah.
like him at the peak of his powers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is like on his 7th-3, like Steph
And this-
Curry hitting his 7th-3
Yeah.
in the playoff game.
Yeah.
Like he is just on fire.
And this really freaks out Skylar. Skylar's like, she had no idea that Walt would be. She thought he was in over his head, but this really freaked her out. But also from Skylar never chooses. Throughout you see that she has a dark side too.
Yeah.
You know? And
yeah, I actually wanted to kind of transition into Skylar because she is a very interesting character,
Yes.
and like what a lot of people discuss about her is that like a lot of people.
We want to know what you guys.
Yeah,
think.
a lot of people hate Skylar for her reactions to what Walt does, and just her whole character. And yeah, I'd like to know. We'd like to know what you guys think about her. But there's a lot of mixed feelings about her, whether they hate her or they understand her. And it's just, I think a lot of people hate her because she is such a realistic person. She has a lot of human responses to what is happening. Because her husband cooks meth. Like,
and has lied to her. Has been lying to her. She even in one of the episodes in season 1. She asked him straight. She was ignoring him too. She just was behaving how he was to her. But she asked him straight up. She's like, "Okay, tell me what you're doing. You need to tell me right now what you're doing. You need stop the lies and tell me." And Walt's like, "Tell you what? Tell you what?" Like it just
keeps gaslighting her. And just completely manipulates her.
And just from that start, it's just you have to have that. I know there's people who because she she slept with Ted and
she sang that happy birthday song.
She sang But you have to have that sympathy for her because what if I was in that situation? Like my partner was acting completely different and not talking to me about any of it. There would create that barrier. That barrier between the Walt and Skylar, and she's such a tragic figure because and then she starts getting into it, but it's just so sad seeing it because it's like you said, it's a realistic standpoint. Like if someone was cooking meth, you can't just justify that. You would react like, what the fuck?
Like obviously it's easy to just watch it and see it from Walt's perspective and just being like, oh, like I really want him to cook that and make a lot of money for his family and beat these other drug dealers. And it's easy to see it from that perspective, and then when Skylar is just like against it, you're like, like why are you trying to stop him from doing that?
That's what makes the show That's what makes the show so good because even though Walt and Jesse, they're the antagonists of the show, they're villains. They're criminals.
They're bad guys.
But you're rooting for them.
And that makes you feel conflicted.
Which is twisted because in reality sense, it takes even the show. It takes you out for that because you're rooting for the bad guys. Essentially, you're rooting for the bad guys.
So how does that make you feel?
Yeah, exactly. And you're just switching that. And as you said, like she has very human emotions, and like same thing. If you found out that your significant other was involved in drug things, how would you react?
Exactly.
And when people, especially when I was watching the show for the first time, when she finally came on board with it, like I was kind of like, okay, she's cool. She was like, okay, I'm gonna go with this. And then when she realizes the same thing, that Walt is going too far down that rabbit hole, she's like, what are you doing? She kind of distanced herself and the rest of their family from him as well.
Yeah. Which is the realistic response. You don't want your family being mixed up with drug business.
And even when
taking the kids out of the house and not making them go to Hank and Marie's.
Even all that, it's very human response is the right thing. Yet us as the viewers and the directors, they did an amazing job with that. Made you dislike her because she's doing the right thing. Isn't that crazy?
Yes!
She's doing the right thing.
That's a great point.
And that's why even some people don't like Hank because he's doing the right thing.
Because he's trying to catch Walt.
He's trying to catch Walt. Yet people are like, I don't like him, even though he's doing the just and right thing.
First time I watched it, I was like, I want Walt to get away with it. Oh, are you kidding? I wanted Walt to win and get away with it. Yeah.
When really he's doing, the right thing. And that's the interesting thing. But I think as we kind of wrap up that part of it, like we're going to be moving into the categories segment of this.
Okay.
And
I'm
excited.
This is going to be really interesting to look into. This is a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, but also the stuff that we really love about the show.
Exactly.
The first category is the goods, the greats, and the ugly. And so we're going to be first talking about, what's good about the show. And I think just to kind of spearhead it, what's really good about the show is you're kind of manipulating you into sympathizing with the drug lord. like, and it makes the audience not know how to feel about themselves.
This wouldn't have been as successful of a show as when, I mean, the acting by itself is brilliant, but it's also the writing too.
Mhm.
You know, the writing is outstanding.
Yeah.
Vince Gilligan, who's one of the creators, he wrote a few episodes. Peter Gould, Peter Gould, he's one of the writers of the show, and a couple other writers too. But they just, you can't make a good show without the writing.
Exactly.
No, you
You
can't.
know, the writing would the writing was so consistent too.
Yeah.
You
Of
know,
course.
yeah.
Like what you were saying, like season 1 was great, but it built on it, and season 2 was even better, and then 3, 4, and then the 5th one was like blew me out of the water.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's like it knew how to be consistent and how to constantly
Yeah.
develop.
And every single season, another thing that they do an amazing job at is with some shows that you can kind of blend seasons 1 and 2, or like, you know, like you kind of forget. Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Mhm.
But every single season has stuff that's memorable.
Yes, that's
About
memorable.
Mhm.
characters, whether it's symbolism, somebody getting, you know, dying, you know,
Yeah.
in that season, you know, they put huge emphasis on each and every one so that it's memorable.
Mhm.
You know, and going off of like what you said too, with the peak, you know, when you talk about something that's really good,
Yeah.
which you see online all the time, when Walter is like, say my name, that is the peak of his ego. He's like, you already know who I am.
Yeah. Why do I
That's-
need
Why does he
You
need
know
to
who
say
I
that?
am.
You know, what he
You don't need to
says,
say it.
what he says to his wife, and then what he says there, you know, outside of the house, you know,
Mhm.
that he knows, you know,
He's fine,
everybody
he's
knows who I am.
Yeah.
Right.
Say my name.
Say my name.
It's the same thing, like, you know, you see sports people when they're really, you know, like,
When they
you
have
know
their
who I am.
ego,
Yeah,
they're like,
ego.
why do I need to? Yeah.
Yeah, you already know, you know who I am.
Yeah. Why do I need to
And
say that?
I think that brings it into like what's really great about the series
Yeah.
is the first thing I think about are the performances, the acting. Like you saying, like say my name, like Bryan Cranston's acting from being like the Ned Flanders, like
This man was
everyday
Malcolm
guy.
in Malcolm
Malcolm
and he
in
was
the
great
Middle.
in Malcolm in the Middle, but
You see
That
him
was a whole-
transform from
Yeah.
that
It
to
was a
just
sitcom.
this manipulative, evil drug dealer.
one of the
and-
greatest
one
characters
of the greatest.
in the history
Yeah.
of television.
And that's not an easy task for an actor.
no.
Like it takes an actor of his caliber to really put on that kind of performance throughout 5 seasons.
Oh,
And then same with Aaron Paul as Jesse,
Yeah.
who just puts on a clinic.
No, yeah.
Like he is just throwing haymakers the whole time. It's,
Oh, yeah.
I like
it's
that we're
just-
making some of the sports references.
Oh yeah, of
too.
course, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
You gotta fit that in somehow, right?
Even
Exactly.
with the greats too, because you know one of the greatest villains too, even you know Giancarlo Esposito, you know him as Gustavo, because him and Walt, this is where they kind of parallel, whereas it's the night and day thing. You know, that appearance. You know, when you first meet Gustavo, he's just he runs, you know, los pollos de manos, and he, you know, right there, there you go. And he just, you know, he gives back to the community, this and that. You know, he's a model citizen.
Yeah.
That's kind of the
He
forefront.
he hides in plain sight.
No,
You
exactly.
know?
Well, Walter just hides.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
just like
And they
lying.
and that you can see how they really bump heads because in some ways they think very similarly.
Well, that's the
on
thing.
some levels, yeah.
That's why they would never be able to work together
Yeah.
because
Because
their
they're too
egos.
close.
They're
Yeah.
too close and
Too
they're
close
so
to
similar.
the
Yeah.
Yeah.
One would have to one up the other. They couldn't
Exactly.
be able to find stability in that
Yeah.
relationship.
Right.
You know, so I read like a little tweet about imagine if Walt, Gus, Mike, Saul, and Jesse all didn't have their differences and all were able to collaboratively work together.
Mhm.
Imagine how
Right,
much
everything.
money they would have made. Imagine how successful they would have been. But that would be impossible.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That would be
They have
impossible
their own motives.
because of their
Well,
personalities.
and it's a clashing of ego
yes.
as well.
Yeah.
Like as put together as Gus is, he still has his ego. He
Yeah.
created this business from the ground up,
Yeah.
and so
Created it.
and it was torn down.
Well, I
by-
created it for revenge, which
Oh,
I
that's
love. I mean, like, there's a whole cartel storyline
Oh,
too.
there's a
Exactly.
You know?
whole.
Yeah. There's so many characters that
Yeah.
just each storyline is just There's the cartel storyline that
Yeah.
just that was kind of like Gus's backstory and why he does what he does too. But there's so many every storyline, which is another reason why I think this is one of the greats too. Every storyline I feel is so solid and
Yeah.
consistent.
No,
You
exactly.
know?
It balances each other out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't overshadow one
Yeah.
or the other.
And
No.
just-
Let's talk about.
We're talking about
Yeah,
great
we're
is
talking
the-
about good and the great, but
We
let's talk
should
about
talk about-
ugly
yeah.
because it's like we're gushing about the show, but no film or show is without its faults.
100%. Yeah.
And I think a low point for it, like rating wise, is the Fly episode in season 3.
Season
Yeah.
3.
And I
Episode
mean, a lot of
10, I
people,
believe.
yeah, episode 10, and a lot of people have their gripes about it, and it's on IMDb, it's the lowest rated episode.
It's the only one in the 7s.
I know, it's the only one. That's
That's
saying
still pretty
something.
good.
That's
Like
saying
7.8
something. There's some
something
shows
like
that their best episode is 7, so
Yeah.
that's like a flex on their part.
No, it is.
And with the standards that Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould have for their show,
Yeah.
Fly is still a really great episode. I think there still is a lot of good things to say about it, but it's
But
definitely
there
the
were some
weakest.
bad things.
It's definitely the
Yeah.
weakest link of what we consider to be like a masterpiece.
Yeah.
100%.
But they also did it. They made the Fly on purpose too. That's the funny thing too. They knew that it wouldn't be eye catching. You know what I'm saying?
No,
right.
So it's kind of like they knew that nobody was gonna like this episode.
But it was necessary.
Yeah.
Because part of that episode, which I was talking to these guys about
Yeah.
before the pod, but some of that episode contained Walt almost breaking down to Jesse, saying like and almost admitting that he killed Jane.
No, exactly.
Too. You know, I'm so sorry about what happened with Jane, and
Right.
then just like they shared that night together.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a very rickety.
Yeah, maybe. Let's see.
That should be okay. Okay, perfect.
The water is a paid actor.
Exactly.
Yeah,
for this
It's
podcast.
like what you're saying.
Come on.
Yeah, I think that's the only. I don't know how you guys feel.
I feel like
that's the only thing.
it's really nitpicking.
Yeah.
Because I still consider The Fly to be a pretty intriguing episode.
Yes.
But amongst everything, it's definitely the weakest link. But I think kind of going off from there.
And can I just
Yeah.
say something real quick too before we go to the next segment? There are people who complain too about Breaking Bad, how slow the show it is too. You
Yeah.
know, like especially the first couple seasons, it really takes a while to really get into it. But
Mhm.
like The Fly, it's all necessary building. It really develops like the characters.
No, it does.
Yeah,
It's all purposeful.
It's all purposeful, and that's what a great show does. It doesn't have if it's like from the start, just like super fast paced all over. It'd be chaotic, you know. There would just be different levels, and just like it wouldn't really work.
Right.
Breaking Bad, it's that slow going process of just like building, and then boom,
And it explodes.
it explodes. It's like Walt, what Mike said about Walt being a time bomb, ticking. And I feel like Ozymandias, which I'm so excited to talk about. I don't know where we can get.
Which is.
You want to talk about that now?
We're actually transitioning into the fun fact digging.
Ooh,
And so this
beautiful.
is, I know Kiki was especially excited for this
Oh,
segment,
yeah.
so I'm going to have you take the lead on,
All right.
on this one, and then we'll pitch in.
pitch it.
Well, hi guys. I think throughout each week, no matter what TV show, movie, or sport we decide to talk about, I'm going to be in charge of doing some fun facts. So the fun facts that I dug up and that I'm very excited to talk about is, I'll just start with Ozymandias.
Yeah.
That episode is what all the events of Breaking Bad led up to that episode.
Which is, for those of you that maybe aren't as, like,
Okay, what are you doing?
familiar
People
with,
haven't watched
with
it. Get off.
Ozymandias,
What are you doing?
Then what are you doing? But it's like, it's the episode.
It's
Yeah.
the episode that's, first of all, there's no perfect episode, but if we had to think of an episode that's damn near perfect, that Ozymandias would be the first one that comes to mind. It is the point in Breaking Bad where everything explodes.
Yeah.
Everything explodes. It's the end. It's the end. First of all, it's the third to last episode of season 5. It is one of the most tragic episodes I have ever seen. It's like a Shakespearean tragedy. It's about, the title is a masterpiece of its own.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on a poem written by Percy Shelley, whose poem is about Ozymandias, who's a king, and it's about the king's. And he's a powerful king, but his empire, there's nothing around him. He's alone. He's alone at the top, and that ultimately is Walt in that episode. His power.
It all comes crumbling down.
It all comes
He
crumbling
loses
down.
everything in that one episode.
His power,
Yeah.
his family, everyone around him, his relationships, it's all gone in the span of that 40-minute episode. That episode alone, I feel, won Bryan Cranston.
Oh,
Emmy.
yeah, for season 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And that episode was so brilliant because there's no coming back to from that episode. Everything, all the relationships he had
It's such a
with
poetic-
Jesse. It's so poetic.
Such a poetic
Yeah.
episode.
The first time I watched it, I was just, what?
It had my anxiety through the roof, for sure.
Yes.
I mean, with, spoiler alert, again, for the billionth time, if you haven't seen it,
Go and watch it.
what are you doing? You know? But it is just anxiety inducing the entire time. Like, Hank gets shot, and then,
so many iconic
yeah.
memories of that. Hank's final words to Walt.
Yeah, and then Walt tells Jesse that he Jane
killed
die.
Jane. That was the
and
episode
then
where and there's no, especially for Walt and Jesse's relationship, there's no coming back from that.
Exactly. That's the point of no return.
And then that scene where Walt only takes Holly and then he calls Skylar, and that acting between the two.
Yeah.
Where Skylar didn't know what he meant when he was saying like, "Why'd you do this?" But through that phone call, through Walt and Skylar, was Walt basically, they knew the police was listening, but Walt was basically telling, it's all me, I did this.
Right.
My wife didn't have anything to do with it.
Because he's a smart guy.
So,
He's doing it with multiple motives. But anyways, we digress.
Yes. But then
that is a cool little fact about Ozymandias being a poem.
And another fun fact, which I won't take a lot of time because I know we're on a little tight schedule, but what I thought was very cool was Bryan Cranston actually directed 3 episodes of Breaking Bad. And besides just being a top-notch actor, his directing skills were also, I didn't know this until I was
He's a multi-talented guy.
Multi-talented guy. He directed the first episode was a season 2 premiere called 737, which it was 737 for 2 reasons. Walt, initially, before he was drawn to that power, he calculated that he needed $737,000 to secure for his family before the cancer took him. And then the second reason was the plane in season 2 that crashed. See, that's
and that was a model 737 plane.
Yes.
So that's where it comes in with that number.
And real quick, like what Breaking Bad does too, one of the greats too, is you don't know what that was in the start of season 2, and it opens with that scene. It starts like
with the teddy bear in the pool, the pink teddy bear, and you thought like some sort of gang affiliated crime was happening the entire season, and it ended up being the plane crash. And that's actually really funny you just brought that up, because I actually found a fun fact about the plane crash. I'm using Reddit, so just fact check me, tell me if I'm wrong, but it says here that the plane crash caused in Breaking Bad due to Jane's father's negligence is based on the real-life Cerritos plane crash from 1986. The name of the air traffic controller responsible for the real-life crash was Walter White. That was his name for this crash. Again, fact check me, but I thought that was really interesting. And I also found another cool fact about, I think it was about Saul, if I can find it down.
Played by Bob Odenkirk. He also has a spin-off series, Better Call Saul, which is almost as good as Breaking Bad.
I think I found it. Okay. It says that in season 2, with the introduction of Mike, that was never supposed to happen because Mike never existed in the original script.
Played by Jonathan Banks.
It was originally supposed to be Saul who cleaned up Jane's death, but Bob Odenkirk was busy guest starring on How I Met Your Mother, so they had to hire a last-minute stand-in actor to stand in for him. And look how great.
Look at Jonathan Banks being one of the best characters too.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
In general, not just on Breaking Bad, but just one of the best characters too.
Yeah. But
phenomenal actor. And he's one of those actors where I feel like he's not like a crazy well-known actor, but every role he's in, he's been a long time standing actor. Every role he's in, he's just been great. He's a very consistent, solid actor.
No, yeah, he is. And even with that being said, like one crazy thing too is Giancarlo Esposito, like he had been working with Spike Lee, and he did a few other small productions and stuff like that. But he was, before he got casted for Gustavo, he was in such financial struggle, and he was trying to find a way to provide for his family that he was actually going to hire a hitman to kill him so his family could get the life insurance money.
Wow.
But he ended up auditioning. He ended up being casted for the role of Gustavo, and he actually talked a lot with the directors on how to make Gustavo not just, because they originally wanted Gustavo to just be a normal mafioso, but he was like, no, like the same thing as you just said, like he wanted him to be in plain sight. So lots of the stuff in terms of how Gustavo's character was, Giancarlo Esposito wrote. The whole OCD thing, all that stuff. How particular he is. He's just right there. He's just a model citizen. He actually wrote that in for his own character.
Wow.
So he actually planned all that. Was him.
Because of
he talked to Vince Gilligan on how to be able to develop that character, and so that was his own work.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Like going from hiring a hitman to
becoming
to
now.
becoming.
Yeah.
I mean,
one of the
you see
best
him now.
actors
He's in
today.
like every single production.
He's in
Like
video games,
and he
too.
doesn't
Yeah.
mix it with villains. That's his main thing, and
Yeah.
just very subtle.
it's just that's his product.
Yeah, it's just being very subtle with it.
Oh, and real quick, I don't think I finished it, but the other 2 episodes that Bryan Cranston directed to was No Moss. He did, and that was the premiere of season 3. He directed a lot of premieres. He did the 2
Yeah.
premiere. He
There's
did
a
the
lot
premiere
of-
of season 2,
he
and then
does
the
a lot
premiere
of
of
these.
season 3. Yeah, and then his final episode he directed was in season 5, Blood Money.
That's when Hank finally is
Realized.
he realizes
Yeah.
his eyes that
I
Walt
didn't know that.
Heisenberg.
I know that was the end of
That's a pretty.
because season 5 came in 2 parts, and that was the end of part 1. That
Mhm.
episode.
So it's
yeah.
pretty much a premiere again.
Yeah.
So he's always in charge of premieres.
Yeah.
Fun fact, Bryan Cranston writes premieres.
Man of many talents.
But kind of diving into this next category, prequel or sequel, and I mean, that's a pretty easy answer. And
Yeah.
It's got both.
Yeah.
It does have
The
both.
prequel being Better Call Saul, which is fantastic. If you haven't seen that, you got to watch it as well. It adds
Yeah.
so much to it.
People have asked too, would you recommend watching Better Call Saul first or Breaking Bad first? Gotta watch
You
Breaking
got to
Bad
watch
first.
Breaking
Yeah.
Bad
Yeah.
first.
Because it just adds more. It makes Better Call Saul. It
Of
adds
course.
much more emphasis. It adds more to the whole entire story.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that makes sense.
Even though Better Call Saul was
I
before,
mean, even
Yeah.
though it is before, it's always good to watch the original, and then when you watch the prequel, it adds so much more backstory
it's
Yeah.
to
like
the original product.
it's like Lord of the Rings and Hobbit.
Exactly.
You gotta
But this
watch
is
Lord
better
of the
than
Rings.
that.
Yeah.
This is better than it.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
But and then
I agree.
with the sequel, there's El Camino,
Camino,
which is
okay.
Jesse's story after he escapes from the neo-Nazis
Yeah.
and his his
It's the
journey.
ending. It's the ending Jesse deserved, even though I don't think it was as good of quality
Oh,
as
yeah.
Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul.
Yeah.
It was
It
necessary.
was a nice
Yeah.
send-off.
Yes.
Yeah. Because otherwise, you would just be left with the question, like, where's Jesse? And that's
Right.
how they kind of.
Well, you could have done that too. It could have ended like
It
that
leaves
too.
it up to interpretation at
Yeah.
first, but
Yeah.
then they wanted to kind of fill in the
The
Yeah.
gaps.
Yeah.
It was a Hollywood ending.
It was-
I'll say that. It was a
Yeah.
Hollywood ending.
But I mean, all 3 projects by Vince Gilligan, it's still great. I
Mhm.
mean, it's it's great. But now onto this next one. It's kind of a fun, imaginative one. But
Yeah.
which character would you get a beer with? You kind of answered it previously.
Hank,
Yeah.
Yeah, from the characters, who would you get a beer with? You want to get?
How would you want to try as Trader, bro? I mean, like, when I saw that, I was like, oh my god, he makes his own beer. Like, doesn't make his own beer.
What if
Just
it's
make his own
nasty,
beer.
man? What if it's like tastes like piss?
He makes his own margaritas too.
Mm.
That margarita.
that looked pretty good.
That
actually.
looked really good.
I
Yeah.
might wanna
So
try
I feel like if he makes a mean margarita, even Skylar said that too.
Yeah.
I feel like his beer would be pretty solid too. Okay.
And then
it was handcrafted.
handcrafted, original.
That's what he wants.
But who would you
I would
get a
choose
drink with?
Gustavo, but here's the thing. He
Uh-huh.
would be more wine.
He's a wine guy.
More sophisticated.
Yeah, more sophisticated. And it won't be filled at the normal level. It'll be slightly less.
He's thought
slightly
about
less,
this.
Slightly less. And there'll be a charcuterie board and all that stuff. So that's how.
You guys
it
going on
works.
a date?
Naturally. Naturally.
Yeah.
No, these are great date ideas, but I think with mine, I'd get a beer with Jesse. I just feel like him and I would
bitch.
we'd
Let's
get
bring it
yeah,
up.
bitch. Yeah, we get
Yo.
along pretty well.
Yeah.
We'd get like Modelo's together or something.
Yeah. Would
and
it
just,
be laced with something?
you
Or
know.
just straight?
Oh, I'd hope not. No, that's more Walter's thing.
Yeah, true.
But I'd get a beer with him, and then maybe we'd go-kart riding afterwards.
I could see you doing that. I could honestly see you doing that.
And we're just kind of like driving,
Yeah.
And it just seems like a chill guy to get a drink with.
Eating Funyuns and.
Those Funyuns are awesome.
And then maybe playing some video games
Yeah.
afterwards.
Mario Kart.
It's a Mario Kart,
Yeah.
But we can always dream, But
Oh, let's see. I want to hear what you guys think too.
Yeah.
Please leave a thing in the
In the
comments. Of
comments.
who would you want to get a beer with too?
Yeah.
now we're on to the Kramer Award, which is who was the scene stealer of the entire show, which
Yeah.
means they weren't in like a full season or they weren't in
What part of the main cast?
main cast.
But every time they were on the show,
Right.
Yeah.
you were it's a memorable scene.
And some of the candidates that we kind of wrote down is Todd from the Neo-Nazis in season
Played by,
5
Jesse
Jesse
Plemons.
Jesse Plemons, who's
Yeah.
an amazing actor now. Lydia, who we actually don't know who's played.
Laura
by-
Fraser.
Oh, Laura Fraser.
Yeah.
He's the guy. Okay, he's the name guy. Who also had a very big impact in the final season, and then Jane, who was played by Kristen Ritter.
Correct.
Right?
Good job.
Yes,
Yeah.
and she was a standout, and was a major part of the finale of season 2 of her overdosing.
But
Yeah.
last but not, I think
Oh,
the
yeah.
best for last was Tuco Salamanca, played by Raymond Cruz.
He's just
Honestly, we didn't.
At
The
time.
sad thing about us is that we're such big Breaking Bad fans, but he was the last person we thought of too.
Yeah.
But then we're just like, how could we not? How could we not?
how was he an afterthought of the scene stealer? Because
He's
you
only
agree
in
he is the scene stealer.
Yeah.
of
He's
the
only
show.
in.
Yeah.
He's only in like four episodes total.
Yeah.
He's in the last 2 episodes of season 1, and then the
Season
first
one.
2 episodes of season 2.
Yeah.
Which
Every
is
scene
insane.
he's in, yeah,
It's so intense.
but it's so memorable.
Yeah,
Mhm.
memorable. It's
Yeah.
intense, and it makes you feel on edge because you're like, what is this guy gonna do? You know,
He could
'cause
snap at any second.
any second. You know, like even people who like when one of his henchmen is laughing, what does he do? He kills himself for laughing.
Like he's like even trying to support him. He's like, yeah, don't forget who you were working for. And
Yeah.
he's like, and you think that's like a a
Yeah.
good support.
He's like,
Wow.
what did you say? Yeah.
He was already. It
He was
showed.
high.
He was high AF
Yeah.
on meth because he's already snorted a few lines of the meth and just
He was
got so
unhinged.
crazy. Yeah, he was unhinged. I really want to do paint my.
So you can be like,
Yeah,
look at this, look at this.
That I feel like it's considered to be one of the best lines too.
Oh,
It's like,
yeah. And we're about to get to that, but
Damn, man, look at
but
that.
that's why he's such a scene stealer, is because you
Right,
can
he
quote
is.
like a bunch of things he said in a 4 episode span,
Yeah.
and that's why I think, like, amongst the nominees, can you guys agree? Like,
Yeah.
he's the
I think
winner
too.
of
I
the
think
scene
it's
stealer.
tight. I
He gets
think so.
yeah,
Tight,
it's
tight.
tight. Yeah, I think so.
That's such an iconic line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think he wins. I think he wins the Kramer Award.
Yeah.
But I feel
Best
like
scene
Todd is a
stealer.
close second.
Oh, he.
Yeah.
You know, because Todd's one of those characters, even though he's not as he doesn't.
Dominant.
I think he would be
As
like
Tuco.
the Jokic to Shea in the
Yeah.
MVP running.
He's not as like
You know?
vocal
Yeah.
as Tuco, but some of the stuff he does on the show,
You're like, what the heck?
you're just like pure sociopath.
Of course.
Yeah.
Killing the kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. After the robbing the train, just with no hesitation,
He's a close.
and then killing Andrea too.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right.
To
Oh, that was
Jesse's
a
woman.
pretty. I
Yeah.
totally forgot about that.
That's just like, it's crazy, and it's just unbelievable. Who's played by Emily Rios, and having Jesse watch that. Too.
Oh, that was also an incredible performance.
But
by
he's
him
so-
when that was happening.
Why he's such a sociopath too? He's not just he's just like, just so you know, this isn't personal. Boom. Supposed to trying to like be like just like nice about it. It's just it's just
He's like a sociopath where he's like nice, but like he does psychotic things.
Yeah.
But kind of segueing into like the quotes,
Yeah.
which is our next category, as we were talking about iconic quotes.
Yeah.
We can discuss some of our favorite or most iconic quotes. And I think some of my favorites come from Walt, of like, most iconic is like I won and I am the danger.
I'm
Yeah.
the danger.
Like,
It's probably mine.
The
Yeah.
big fanatic, like Breaking Bad fans would know, but underlying ones like would be like, this is my own private domicile, not be harassed,
Yeah.
Bitch. Dude, that's more
Yeah.
comedic, but that's a memorable
No, it
quote
is.
too.
It is.
Yeah.
Or any time when Jesse says bitch, you just remember.
Or I also love, yeah, Mr. White, yeah, science.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or just like when Walt's describing, trying to give him a little lesson of like when they were stranded out in the desert and he was making a battery.
Mhm. Those were, oh my god, like,
He's
like
like,
he was
what-
like, what are we making?
What element do we add and what are we using right now? And then he's like, he tries to hint, he's like, wire.
And he's like, and then he's like, what are we building? What are we building?
He's like,
Like, that whole episode was chock full of
No, it's so
hilarious
funny. Yeah.
quotes.
yeah.
And there's some great Gus quotes like, explain yourself.
Yeah.
And you are done.
Done. Yeah.
Fired.
Yeah.
Like, you can just do any of those in his accent. And
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
No,
That
it's so
scene
funny.
too with Gus, where they have the box cutter scene, where Gus stole that scene. Even though he had
Yeah.
the least amount of lines, he stole that scene with that
Yeah.
one liner,
No, exactly.
with not his presence, just walking through, not knowing what he's gonna do, and then eventually killing
Yeah.
one of his goons.
Yeah.
And then his final
Oh,
line
yeah.
after killing, and then walking when they're all just so shocked, and he's like, "Well, get back to work."
Exactly. And he's showing them in that scene, like, not only is he going to, like, order them, but also he's also willing to do the dirty work, too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, and even, like, you talked about this a while back, like, even, he even starts, like, pointing the gun at him, too. Like, I remember he's holding Walt hostage.
Mm-hmm. Oh, because when he cuts the guy's throat.
Yeah.
And
But
then,
yeah,
and
he's
then
just
Mike,
showing. Yeah, he's like staring.
Mike is scared.
Mike
Yeah,
is
Mike
like-
is scared.
Even
Yeah.
Mike is pointing the gun.
That's such a great.
He's so shocked.
Yeah.
He was like, he wouldn't even expect that would happen.
Yeah.
Well,
Like much less for him to like.
when we get
kill
into
someone.
Better Call Saul 2, which
We'll talk about Mike.
We'll talk about like
And
yeah.
Gus and
Because-
more into-
Better Call Saul opens a whole line of things too with between Mike and Gus's relationship. Like there was that point in the last season that Gus might have killed Mike too.
True.
You know, which we'll talk about more. But like Mike's not happy to be in this.
No,
No.
he does it
Now
at a necessity for his granddaughter.
Yeah.
All broken
Yeah.
people. They're all broken people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a
It
show
is.
of broken people.
Right, yeah.
And well, in this category, I'm curious what you guys would do for like a double feature for like a movie night. Like if you were to watch Breaking Bad, if you would watch anything before it or after it, just to pair with it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you want me to go first, Josiah?
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I would say that paired with Breaking Bad, would Breaking Bad come first or would it be after? Would it come second?
I would watch Breaking Bad first.
Okay,
And
if it
then,
would be Breaking
and then
Bad
pairing it with,
Yeah.
with something else.
God. Honestly, I would have to probably say Sicario.
Sicarios is a good one.
Sicario's great. But also, it has those elements too. They have a lot of Godfather references too. I'd have to say The Godfather too. It's just it has those references and it has a lot of elements too of The Godfather being with Walt being with matching Michael Corleone being alone.
And there's
at
even
the
that
top.
Saul line where he's like,
What did Tom Hagen do? I was just kind of
Vito Corleone.
He's like, I know. That's also, honestly, that's one of my favorite lines too.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite lines of the
Saul
show.
has great lines.
Yeah. He's like, and Walt's like, I know Vito Corleone. And Saul's like, no shit. Right now you're Fredo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's such a good line.
And we'll get even more into, because we haven't even talked about like enough about Saul, but that'll be for Better Call Saul.
Yeah,
that's his own thing. But I like those choices.
Yeah.
Like The Godfather, Sicario,
And
The
Narcos.
Trade.
I love Narcos. Narcos is
Yes.
also a great. I mean, that's more cartel related,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
relates a lot to the cartel storyline of Breaking Bad too.
Yeah, no, it does.
What about you?
Yeah,
Josiah?
well,
What would you
yeah,
say?
I'd probably say just because the linear, like if we're talking about linear in the storyline of how everybody's connected, yet separate in their own ways, and just shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
I have to say The Departed, which is a movie that Kiki actually recommended to me because
Written, directed by Martin Scorsese.
Martin Scorsese.
Which
is so good.
is on the list.
Yeah.
We will be
talking
discussing
about
that
too.
eventually, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's a great
Just
pick.
because everybody kind of has their own storyline, but yet everybody is so connected, and that's how it is with Breaking Bad. Because that just kind of
I
ties
feel like they
together.
work really well off
So
of
they
each
do,
other.
and the King, but no, The Departed works really good.
Just The Departed, yeah. Disregard what he said.
No,
to
The
link,
Departed,
to
yeah.
link back to what he was saying about that. No, but my choice,
Yeah.
I would say Scarface, because I mean, I would love like Narcos or Sicario.
Yeah, I was
Scarface
wondering
right
if you were
here. Wondering.
I can't even
But
But
there's even a scene in Breaking Bad where Walt Jr. and Walter are watching Scarface, and it kind of links to his addiction to wanting to be the most powerful, and then how it ends up being the downfall of him, and he dies in the end. Spoiler alert. Sorry if you haven't seen Scarface, but yeah, and so it kind of does parallel that. So I think after watching Breaking Bad, it'd be pretty cool to get into Scarface just to see those drug pins.
Yeah, even with that whole concept, like in Scarface, like the world is yours. Everybody's trying to, in a sense, like trying to make their own ends meet in their own way. Gustavo, like basically taking revenge. Jesse, he really just wants peace. That's really what he wants. Mike trying to provide for his granddaughter. And then Walt originally trying to provide for his family, and then his ego, and that's the same thing even with Tony Montana. It's that ego. You know what I'm saying?
And that's always going to be the downfall of someone that's seeking power is the ego.
It's like when you were talking about Jesse, all he wants is peace, and real quick, but who he relates to, which I think out of another character from another outstanding TV show is Kieran Culkin. Roy from Succession. I know it's totally different, but
we'll talk about that.
But he just really you see in that last season of Succession too. He just wants a happy family too, even though his family's so fucked up.
Yeah,
he wants all the siblings to get along too, and I feel like that's what Jesse wants too.
Yeah,
he wants it. He likes that.
So tragic.
Yeah, that's why he just wants it to work out. But
yeah,
alas,
I think I think those are great pairings. So I like those choices, boys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And yeah, I mean, just to bookend this, what do you guys rate it? What's your rating out of? Because
I want you guys to say what your guys' idea is. What you guys said. What you guys talked about.
My personal rating is 10 minerals out of 10 out of respect for Hank.
We're such nerds. So I love it. Yeah, respect for Hank.
Yeah. We use minerals as like the.
I mean, you can use whatever object.
Oh, whatever object. Okay. And I'll
show.
do for Jesse Funyuns. I'll rate it same thing.
Funyuns.
Yeah.
All right.
10 Funyuns
10
out of 10.
Funyuns out of 10.
I like that.
The writing, everything, the character development. Like, there's no. The only downside is the fly. That's the only thing that you can say.
Right.
You know that we discuss as. Even that's even a good episode. Kiki, what's yours?
Well, I'm someone who, even though Breaking Bad is a phenomenal show, I never think anything is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm thinking maybe since I'm wearing the Los Polos Hermanos, I think it's only fitting that I would say 9.7 pollos out of 10.
I like that. I like that choice. Give some variety at the rating.
No,
Yeah.
Exactly.
But this has been a lot of fun, guys. I'm glad that we got to step in here and talk about. This is our pilot for the podcast, for the Cine-Bros podcast.
Yes.
And this has been a pleasure, guys. I'm so glad we got to.
Well,
I had so much fun talking about this.
And I'm looking forward to continuing this. And this is going to be a weekly thing, so expect more to come out on a weekly basis. Stay tuned. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah,
exactly.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Perfect.